911, the address of your emergency.
I just had a 12-year-old boy show up here at my front door asking for help.
It was August 30th. A 12-year-old boy shows up at a stranger's house.
He's emaciated, he's got tape around his legs, he's hungry, and he's thirsty. What's your mom's name? Ruby Franke? Ruby Franke is his mom's name.
Ruby Franke, the popular vlogger from the YouTube channel 8 Passengers, had gained a massive following for her videos showcasing her seemingly idyllic life as a mother to her 6 children. However, everything took a shocking turn when Ruby and her business partner, Jodi Hildebrandt, were arrested on August 30, 2023 and charged with 6 felony counts of child abuse. The days when millions of people trooped in to watch Ruby Franke cook, clean, and hang around with her kids are long gone. Here's what we know about the arrest and case so far, and a little warning, it is a lot more sinister than you thought. On December 18, 2023, Ruby Franke appeared in court, shackled and wearing grey-coloured jail clothing. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath before pleading guilty to the first 3 charges. Emotion overcame her as she admitted guilt to the 4th charge, expressing regret and sorrow for her family and children.
1, aggravated child abuse, a second-degree felony.
Guilty.
To count 3, aggravated child abuse, a second-degree felony.
Guilty.
To count 5, aggravated child abuse, a second-degree felony.
Guilty.
And to count 6, aggravated child abuse, a second-degree felony.
With my deepest regret and sorrow for my family and my children. Guilty.
Before we take a look at the details of the plea agreement and analyze what it means for Ruby Franke, a quick background of the case. The arrests occurred after Franke's son managed to escape from Hildebrandt's house in Ivins, Utah, and sought help from a neighbor who called the police. Prior to this, Ruby Franke uploaded her first YouTube video sometime in January of 2015. This was notably 2 years after the birth of her last child. This family channel was called 8 Passengers, and it was run mostly by Ruby. At its peak, this channel had about 2.5 million subscribers. Ruby posted seemingly everything. She even disclosed information that should be hidden from the public. At first, people were concerned about the violation of the kids' privacy, but in time, other forms of abuse became more glaring. The more Ruby continued to consciously highlight her parenting and disciplinary principles, the more people began to see.
I'm only going to say it one more time, and then you're going to lose the privilege to eat dinner. Cut. One more thing in my house. I'm going to take the scissors, look at me, and I'm going to cut its head off.
Grandma will be so mad!
So what are you going to do?
Are you going to cut anything else? No.
You promise? Look at Mama.
I just got a text message from Eve's teacher, and she said that Eve did not pack a lunch today, and can I bring a lunch over to the school? This happens quite often when you're raising children, because I know that her teacher is uncomfortable with her being hungry and not having a lunch, and it would ease her discomfort if I came to the school with a lunch. But I responded and just said Eve is responsible for making her lunches in the morning, and she actually told me she did pack a lunch. So the natural outcome is she's just going to need to be hungry. And hopefully nobody gives her food and nobody steps in and gives her a lunch.
Videos like this sparked a whole new discussion as some viewers started to worry about the safety of these kids. In 2020, a video was posted about the second oldest brother, Chad. He admitted that he had gotten into trouble for playing a prank on his younger brother. As a result, he had to sleep on a beanbag chair for 7 months.
It was taken away for 7 months and then you give it back like a couple of weeks ago.
I don't think our viewers know that.
You've been sleeping on a beanbag.
I've been sleeping on a beanbag since October. And they gave my room back like 2 weeks ago. Oh, I'll give you the reason why I lost my bedroom. I think so. I think this is the reason. At least this is the reason that's been in my head. It's pretty funny, but now that I look back, I mean, it's pretty depressing.
No, we never told our viewers.
That I woke Russell up at 2 in the morning and told him that we're going to Disneyland and he has to pack. And he got up and made his bed all neatly and then packed all his clothes in the suitcase. And then he walked out the door and I'm like, Russell, he was like, what? And he's all happy. Has his sunglasses on.
Do you think it's funny? Because
and then I walk out.
If you think it's funny, then that was 7 months ago. Maybe you need longer without a bedroom.
It was not funny.
Russell got the big bedroom and Chad got the smaller bedroom. And Russell's bigger bedroom also had a bathroom. But what you guys didn't know was Chad didn't get any room. He didn't get anything. He was sleeping on the floor in the family room. Abby, we took the phone away from Abby in November. And you may never get the phone back.
Probably not.
No, I have no friends.
You can play with friends.
No, like I don't have friends.
I don't have friends either.
I literally like told my friends I'm not hanging out with them anymore.
Because
they say some pretty messed up stuff.
I don't even know where they live. They're pretty far away.
So, summer goal, become the best athlete I possibly can.
Then, in 2022, the 8-passenger channel vanished entirely. But these videos resurfaced and have since been used against Ruby Franke in child abuse charges. There are also first-hand accounts against Jodi Hildebrandt that closely parallel the events that happened within Ruby's family. All of these only imply that Jodi's sinister behavior has actually been going on for about a decade. But how did she get into the lives of the Frankes? It all began when Ruby and Kevin started experiencing problems in their marriage. They then made the decision to see a therapist. That therapist turned out to be Jodi, and the bishops of the Mormon Church reportedly recommended her highly. After Kevin and Ruby thought their oldest son Chad was displaying serious behavioral issues, Jodi also had sessions with him. She was the one who originally suggested their contentious decision to send him to the wilderness behavior camp. It really is starting to look like she may have been responsible for many of their parenting choices. In order to teach her clients to live in truth, Jodi founded a self-help therapy program called Connections. Ruby eventually became entangled in the program and came to the conclusion that she and her kids were living in what Jodi referred to as distortion. Jodi coined that phrase to refer to anything she thought was bad about people, including addiction, codependency, dishonesty, and other human traits. Both women must have forged a close friendship. Before long, Ruby became Jodi's business partner. She served as a co-host for Connections and started promoting radical ideas about living in truth. The closer they became, the more Ruby distanced herself and her children from everyone, including her husband, Kevin. Like the 8-passenger channel, Connections had its fair share of critics who raised questions about their teachings. Many people saw the potential dangers of the teachings. But we don't think anyone actually anticipated that Ruby and Jodi would turn to physically harming Ruby's own children. The day of reckoning came on August 33, when Russell, Ruby's youngest son, managed to escape from a window of Jodi's isolated residence in Utah.
911, the address of your emergency. Okay, and the phone number you're calling from. Tell me exactly what's happened.
I just had a 12-year-old boy show up here at my front door asking for help. And he's said he just came from a neighbor's house, and we know there's been problems at this neighbor's house. He's emaciated, he's got tape around his legs, he's hungry, and he's thirsty.
Okay. Is your door locked?
No, I'm sitting outside with him on the front patio.
Okay, cool.
His ankles are taped up, and he won't tell us why.
Okay.
But he has duct tape around each ankle. Yeah, there's sores around them. I think there's a good chance he's been... Oh, and he has them around his ankles. I mean, his wrists as well. Okay, this boy has been... This kid has obviously been... I think he's been detained. He's obviously covered in wounds.
Okay. Let's get the paramedics headed over that way, okay?
Oh, that's a good idea, too.
The boy was found emaciated with duct tape around his ankles and wrists, but he did not disclose why. Franke's daughter was also discovered at Hildebrandt's house, and both children were taken to the hospital. Franke's 4 youngest children were subsequently placed into state custody. Hildebrandt, a therapist, was also charged with 6 felony counts of aggravated child abuse and has been in custody since her arrest. The boy informed investigators that it was Jodi who restrained him with ropes and that cayenne pepper and honey were used to treat the wounds caused by the ropes, as stated in a search warrant. Authorities argued that the presence of remedies for the children's wounds indicated Hildebrandt's awareness of the abuse. While cayenne pepper has some medicinal properties, it should not be applied to cracked skin or open wounds. Ruby Franke's husband, Kevin Franke, has also filed for a divorce. But that is hardly the most shocking development of this case yet. ASA, if the guilty plea itself wasn't surprising enough, wait till you hear the even more shocking details that were laid out in the plea agreement documents filed with the court. These documents outline what happened to Ruby's youngest children, Russell and Eve Franke, in the Hildebrandt home. Before we go over Ruby's admissions as provided by Law and Crime Network, we just want to say that what those children endured was nothing short of horrific and sickening. So, first Ruby pled guilty to count 1 aggravated child abuse of RF, being Russell Franke. Now, count 1 is about physical injury, which also includes physical torture, and we quote, "The defendant's actions involved the physical torture of RF." Initially, RF was forced to do physical tasks for hours and days at a time. These included wall sites, carrying boxes full of books up and down stairs, and working outside. Eventually, RF was forced to do outside labor without shoes and in the summer heat. He was forced to stand in the direct sunlight for several days. He was forced to remain outside at all hours of the day and night, and for extended periods of time. These actions resulted in repeated and serious sunburns with blisters and sloughing skin. RF was denied adequate water for several of the days he was required to remain in the summer heat, and he was punished when he secretly consumed water. He was denied sufficient food, and when given food, he was given very plain meals, for example, rice and chicken, while others in the house ate regular and more flavorful meals. He was isolated from other people and denied all forms of entertainment, including books, notebooks, and electronics. In addition, after RF attempted to run away in July, his hands and feet were regularly bound. Binding included being tied to the defendant and to weights. Many times, the binding included using 2 sets of handcuffs, 1 on RF's wrists and 1 on his ankles. At times, with RF lying on his stomach, ropes were used to tie the 2 sets of handcuffs together so that his arms and lower legs were lifted off the ground. The bindings resulted in injuries to RF's wrists and ankles, where the handcuffs cut through the skin and damaged the muscle tissue. These injuries were treated with homeopathic remedies and covered with duct tape. Then the bindings were placed on top of the duct tape. Specific instances of abuse committed by the defendant include kicking RF while wearing boots 2, holding his head underwater, and 3, cutting off oxygen by placing her hands over his mouth and nose.
Torture of RF. Initially, RF was forced to do physical tasks for hours and days at a time. These included wall sits, carrying boxes full of books up and down stairs, and working outside. Eventually, RF was forced to do outside labor without shoes and in the summer heat. He was forced to stand in the direct sunlight for several days. He was forced to remain outside at all hours of the day and night by extended periods of time. These actions resulted in repeated and serious sunburns with blistered and sloughing skin. RF was denied adequate water for several of the days he was required to remain in the summer heat, and he was punished when he secretly consumed water. He was denied sufficient food, and when given food, he was given very plain meals, example, rice and chicken, while others in the house ate regular and more flavorful meals. He was isolated from other people and denied all forms of entertainment, including books, notebooks, and electronics. In addition, after RF attempted to run away in July, his hands and feet were regularly bound. Binding included being tied to the defendant and to weights. Many times, the binding included using 2 sets of handcuffs, 1 on RF's wrists and 1 on his ankles. At times, with RF lying on his stomach, ropes were used to tie the 2 sets of handcuffs together so that his arms and lower legs were lifted off the ground. The bindings resulted in injuries to RF's wrists and ankles where the handcuffs cut through the skin and damaged the muscle tissue. These injuries were treated with homeopathic remedies and covered with duct tape. Then the bindings were placed on top of the duct tape. Specific instances of abuse committed by the defendant include 1. Kicking RF while wearing boots. 2. Holding his head underwater. and 3, cutting off oxygen by placing her hands over his mouth and nose.
All this time, we have been hearing about duct tape, cayenne peppers, and all the other bad stuff, but we never imagined that the abuse was this bad. Now, note that this abuse occurred over a 3-month period over the summer, from around May to August. So, just think about how hot it was out in those months when Russell was made to stay outside. Ruby Franke also pleaded guilty to count 3 in the original charging document. This third count is about aggravated child abuse. On this note, the document read, "The actions described above cause severe emotional harm to RF due to the fact that they began in May and escalated throughout the summer months." Additionally, the defendant and another adult regularly sought to indoctrinate RF and convince him that he was evil and possessed, and that he needed to willingly be obedient to avoid punishment, and that the punishments were necessary to repent. He was also told that everything that was being done to him was acts of love.
RF, due to the fact that they began in May and escalated throughout the summer months. Additionally, the defendant and another adult regularly sought to indoctrinate RF and convince him that he was evil and possessed, and that he needed to willingly be obedient to avoid punishments, and that the punishments were necessary to repent. He was also told that everything that was being done to him were acts of love.
Hearing this, we immediately begin to think about everything Jodi Hildebrandt said about their aunt, Jodi Hildebrandt. This is definitely the kind of manipulation that Jesse allegedly endured at Jodi's hand. Jodi Hildebrandt, who prefers the pronouns they/them, is a child of one of Jodi's siblings. Unfortunately, their parents had put them in Jodi's care when they were young.
We knew 14, almost 15 years ago that she's already done this to me.
After enduring what they refer to as brutal abuse at the hands of their Aunt Jodi, Jesse has spent years trying to find their voice again. The harsh treatment Jesse endured greatly mirrors all that the younger Franke children seemingly endured in that house of horrors.
This room and write out my sins on a paper. She would come back in and read these sins back to me and have me kneel on the floor on my hands and knees and beg for forgiveness.
According to Jesse, Jodi Hildebrandt has a long history of child abuse, including the use of duct tape.
So the things that I experienced while living with Jodi, I experienced being tied, I experienced being duct taped, I experienced being blindfolded, I experienced severe isolation, I experienced severe emotional, spiritual, and psychological abuse. I experienced being told I shouldn't be around other people, being told that I was dangerous to be around. People were afraid of me to the point where I was afraid of myself.
Also explained why she believes Ruby could be making up all those sexual accusations about the Franke child.
Remarkably convincing. She is also terrifying if you cross her, because she has and will systematically destroy your life. She destroys your reputation. She destroys any of your credibility. Because one, we have a culture of people not believing children and not trusting children. And also children trust their parents, and then the parents trust the church. So there's been, and Jodi, what she does that's so tricky is that she utilizes and uses whatever is available. So if you go to her with OCD, if you go to her with severe depression, she'll use that information as a way of control. Oh, you have OCD because you have deep-rooted shame. And those tics are happening because the shame has nowhere to go. And so it's coming out in this neuroticism. It's devastating because I went forward as well. I mean, I went to the police when I was 16. I tried to do what I could, and no one believed me. Because why would they? She destroyed my credibility. I was an angry teenager. When I'm coming forward, I was not planning on coming forward to the media other than just doing the podcast interview. Is when I heard that Ruby accused her child of this, and I just hope that this can give the public some context and some clarity of what is happening and why they should not believe her.
So 6 charges of...
According to Jesse, there are also documented police reports that confirm their story of abuse. Apparently, Jesse even made it to the American Fork police station in March 2010 and reported a case against Jodi. Although their Aunt Jodi did not face any real consequences, they were glad they made that report.
Jodi. And I understand why the public is focusing on Ruby. It's Ruby's children. But all of these theories and these modalities and these parenting ideas, that all comes from Jodi.
Kevin feels.
Moving back to Ruby's guilty plea, she also pled guilty to count 5 in the original charging document. This count 5 is about the abuse of EF being Eve Franke, who was only 9 years old at the time. According to the documents, the defendant's actions also caused severe emotional harm to EF. Other than binding in the specific instances of abuse RF was subjected to, EF was subjected to the same treatment as her brother. She was isolated and forced to do the physical tasks, remain outside, and denied food and water. She was also repeatedly told she was evil and possessed. The punishments were necessary for her to be obedient and to repent, and these things were being done to her to help her. EF was convinced that she was evil and needed to go through these things in order to repent.
Other than binding and the specific instances of abuse RF was subjected to, EF was subjected to the same treatment as her brother. She was isolated and forced to do the physical tasks, remain outside, and denied food and water. She was also repeatedly told she was evil and possessed. The punishments were necessary for her to be obedient and to repent, and these things were being done to her in order to help her. EF was convinced that she was evil and needed to go through these things in order to repent. 9 years old. Unbelievable.
Moving on to the last count that Ruby Franke pled guilty to, it was the 6th count in the original charging documents. Now, this was abuse that constituted physical injury that included multiple injuries, specifically directed at Eve Franke. The document read, "The defendant's actions caused 2 or more physical injuries to EF. She was forced to work outside in the heat, barefoot. She was also forced to run barefoot on dirt roads for an extended period of time. F's feet were repeatedly injured, and she was repeatedly sunburned. When examined on August 30, these wounds were apparent by scabs, blisters, and sloughing skin."
More physical injuries to EF. She was forced to work outside in the heat barefoot. She was also forced to run barefoot on dirt roads for an extended period of time. EF's feet were repeatedly injured by, and she was repeatedly sunburned. When examined on August 30th, these wounds were apparent by scabs, blisters, and sloughing skin. So that is what Ruby Franke pled guilty.
Shortly after the hearing, a press conference was held during which prosecutor Eric Clark had a few things to say about what was next for Ruby Franke. Notably, he explained that Ruby Franke will remain incarcerated until her sentencing on the 20th of February.
Which will occur, and the date was February 20th, I believe. We are pleased that Mrs. Franke has accepted responsibility for her criminal actions and that justice is being served to the extent possible in this type of a situation. We're grateful for the law enforcement officers.
So, out of the original 6 charges against her, Ruby Franke pled guilty to only 4 of them. You might think this is unprecedented, but there is actually an interesting reason behind it. And this brings us to the last update on the Ruby Franke's case. In addition to a guilty plea, Ruby might also have agreed to testify against her former partner, Jodi Hildebrandt. You see, Ruby's law firm went on to release a statement announcing that she was going to plead guilty. We might not have thought much of it then, but taking another look at the statement, you can clearly see that Ruby and her team are turning on Jodi Hildebrandt. This is what the statement says. Ruby Franke is a devoted mother and a woman committed to constant improvement. Initially, Miss Franke believed that Jodi Hildebrandt had the insight to offer a path to continual improvement. Miss Hildebrandt took advantage of this quest and twisted it into something heinous. Over an extended period, Miss Hildebrandt systematically isolated Ruby Franke from her extended family, older children, and her husband, Kevin Franke. This prolonged isolation resulted in Miss Franke being subjected to a distorted sense of morality shaped by Miss Hildebrandt's influence. Going by this statement, it is safe to assume that this is one of the reasons the prosecutors allowed this plea deal, where 2 whole charges could be dropped, to happen. Beyond that, it could also explain why Ruby was willing to turn on Jodi Hildebrandt. Of course, you can't rule out the fact that this would save a lot of time and expense, which is typical for a lengthy trial. Not to mention sparing the 2 young children from having to testify against their mother in court. With 2 charges dropped and a chronic child abuser facing the full extent of the law, it looks like a win-win situation for both sides. Well, it technically isn't a win for Ruby Franke. This plea deal does not mean that Ruby will escape prison time. The deal does not even include having minimal prison time. Now, you know that she is scheduled to be sentenced in February 2024, but what you might not know is that each of these child abuse counts carries a prison term of 1 to 15 years. So Ruby Franke might be looking at a sentence that involves spending this amount of time consecutively for every count she pled guilty to. In other words, Ruby Franke would be going away for a long time. So, you might be wondering where this leaves Jodi Hildebrandt. Well, Jodi has got a hearing scheduled for the 27th of December. Right now, there has not been any news or sign that Jodi will go the same route as Ruby by pleading guilty to the charges against her. But we guess we will have to tune in to see.